So, as I mentioned earlier, unit tests are the uh, most speed or the execution speed that we considered compared to others. It is the most fastest. So, while we are looking at the subject of unit test, it has its weaknesses as well. As I mentioned earlier, unit tests are going to be completely focusing on business logic. Okay. But for some reason, we need other things to be tested out. Okay. For example, we need to test the UI. Okay, so we have most of the time when we are dealing with web application, mobile applications, we we uh, we are to interact with things like buttons. We are to interact with things like uh, we are to interact we are to interact with things like um, toggle buttons, pictures, dialogues, sometimes you name it, anything that you see in a screen, we need to interact with those things. Okay. So when we are interacting with those things, what we will gonna do is we need to make sure, okay, a certain component in this scenario. Let's say, for example, in a mobile application, a certain page. Okay, we take a certain page as one single component. Okay, in a web page, we can consider a certain page. Okay, a page that you are seeing right now as as a single component, or even sometimes a subsection of the page to be a sample component. For example, you guys can see. Um, let's take the Google slide in here. Okay, so in Google Slides, you guys will see a menu bar on top, something like this. It says File, Edit, View, that's kind of thing. So we can consider the File menu as a one single component. Okay, or even we can think the File and New submenu, it's representing the presentation and from template gallery. That is also a component. These two items altogether can be a component. Okay, so the component, we can't actually frame it to a single page or a single functionality or a single section, but rather than we can have that to be placed, to be worked into a position where um, it is like a section of our code. Okay, it's a section, a subsection of our application. So what should happen when we are writing a uh, what should be happening when we are writing a component test? So in a component test, we can test either one of either this file menu as a one single component, or this subsection as a component. Either way, okay, whenever we have scope down, whenever we have scope down the component, we can run test against this. Even let's take this one single menu item which represent a presentation, that can be a component as well. So the testing that we're going to be doing against, it's totally up to the level of the component that we're going to be selecting. So for example, let's assume the smallest one that we can see in here. Let's assume this icon plus text. Okay, there is an icon in here, a yellow icon, and there is this presentation text. Okay, so let's consider this one as a single component. Okay, so this is something that we can see, right? We can see this uh, see this icon and its text representation. But the in reality, this is for human eyes. The browser is making sure. Oops. The browser is making sure. I think I need to do something like this. Inspect element. Okay, that would make more sense. But in reality, if I go to presentation and if I try to go down in here, and if I try to, let's take a very simple one. Let's take this as this component. The menu component is not helping with me, but in reality, you guys can see it is bunch of HTML text. Okay, it's saying div and bunch of classes, bunch of styles, and the content is theme. Okay, so this is the one that we are currently seeing. This is the one that we currently see in here. So if we are to write a test against this, if you are guys to write a test against this, there are two things that we can do. We can check the HTML in this scenario HTML. We load this and we identify this div. Okay, this is one single div. We identify this div and we take this div, and after identifying this div, we can check, okay, within this div the content should be theme. Okay, the within this section the content should be theme. Okay, but we need to identify this. So how we can identify? Most of the time there is an ID in here. You guys can see, I'm not sure. Let me zoom in. Okay, so you guys can see the div have an ID, slide theme button. Okay, so what we can do is we can write a test case. Okay, when you render this view, okay, when you show this view, there will be a div with the ID slide nav theme. Okay, within that, there should be a text called theme. Okay, so that's how we're gonna test. Whenever we are rendering this page, this theme button will be always there. Okay, I'll repeat once again. So when we show this page, there will be a div named slide theme button. Within that, there will be a text called theme. Then we can write a test case. Okay, first we will render this. Once we render this, we find this and we check the content of that div is theme. Okay, so that kind of test, okay, we are checking after we rendering this component, and we are checking the content is the same that we are expecting, is what we can call a simple component testing. Okay, for some reason uh, a developer has put Control C and Control V. Now it's rather than theme, it is showing theme V. Okay, you guys can see I can edit in here by mistake. Okay, this is not actual mistake, I just edited for demonstration purpose. But someone in the team forget to, like, when they are pasting, they accidentally paste V, and for some reason we did not catch. If think this goes to a live server, okay, when you are going to launch this, you guys will see theme V. Okay, that is not the expected behavior. The expected behavior should be theme. There is an extra V in here. So if you haven't written component testing, if you haven't written in component testing, what will happen? This won't be captured, or this mistake will not be captured anywhere. So this is bad. I mean, of course, nothing breaking change. Okay, it's not gonna like, hold the world at one point, but still, it's a bug, or it's an issue which we consider not uh, not good or not tolerable. Okay, in such case, because this even though this is like a very small mistake that a person can make, think of a product that is uh, uh, that is that is a life and death situation, that kind of thing. If we do a small mistake, something like this, a person could die, or someone can get injured or something like that. What if something like that happens? Okay, so make sure, say for example, a doctor is giving a prescription to a user. Okay, the prescription should be 0.5 millimeters. Okay, for some reason with the update it's showing 500 millimeters. Okay, the point is missing. In a scenario like that, if the doctor is careful enough, he might notice okay, there is an odd value. But sometimes, if we are believing in the system, sometimes we might get mistakes, sometimes we might not notice it is giving a wrong prescription. Prescription type is wrong, so that's going to be a life-threatening situation. So think scenarios like that. So by using these kind of techniques, okay, first we identify this component and we check the content whether it is the expected one as we want. Okay, so if that is the correct content, our test will pass. Otherwise it will say, hey, the content is the content that we are looking is theme, but right now we are seeing theme V. That is wrong. Okay, the test case will figure it out and notify there is wrong with this component. Okay, so that's like, I'm not saying that is the exact way Google might be doing a unit component testing in here, but that is a valid test case that we can run against. So in a scenario like that, make sure we are known to the component. Okay, this is the component and we are testing the content. Sometimes we might need to think, okay, is this disabled? Okay, sometimes this one might be disabled. Or is this having the color gray? Okay, is this having the color yellow? Is this is having um, light blue? That kind of situations can be also checked. Okay, it's not all about the content. It might depending on the colors, attributes, a lot of things that we can test. Okay, so when you are executing component test, you guys can see it's all about the UI that we are seeing in here. Okay, we need to have some tangible or visible thing. Okay, so we need to check on that. All right, so so you might say, okay, if it is visibly, we want to check if it is something visible, don't we need a human to do that? Okay, don't we need a human to do the colors are this and that? No, we don't need. In HTML or any I'm taking HTML as example since it is easily accessible, but in any system, these as you guys have seen, these are like codes, right? HTML representation, one HTML representation. So with the HTML representation, what will happen is um, they have things like attributes, content, color, all those things will be in code. So when we are writing a component test, we will be checking that content. Okay, so in order to check the color, we can simply say the color should be this and that. So it will be checked by the testing framework or something like that that we are using. We do not need to check something like that visually by using a human eye. Okay, so that uh, when we're talking about in that perspective, the component testing can happen, okay, without human interaction, without even looking at this UI, by simply looking at the code itself and validating that it is against the use case, we can write a component test. Okay, so do not get uh, do not get the idea that component test should be done by a human or a person. It can be recognized, so it can be used by um, any software that is capable of writing tests. Okay. And one thing that I forgot to mention, testing is somewhat of a program that is also what we call there are frameworks that we can do testing. Okay, testing is not like codes. There are certain type of code that we might need to execute, but on most of the time it is done by frameworks. So when we are doing unit tests, there are certain frameworks that we can do. And we are doing component tests, there are certain frameworks. And when we are writing end-to-end test, the next testing type that we're going to be talking, it has certain uh, it has certain test capabilities. Okay, and so comparing all those things together, uh, comparing all these together, uh, testing frameworks play a different or play a crucial role in these things. So one thing that you guys need to remember, uh, these testing frameworks are different from language or framework to framework for most of the time. Say for example, if you want to write a unit test in Java, the most popular unit testing library in Java is what we call JUnit. Okay, a JUnit is a library that help us to validate our logics in Java. So in JavaScript or TypeScript, most of the time, if you want to validate our coding, if you want to validate our business logics, unit test, we can use something like Jest. Okay, so we can use Jest in order to do the code checking. Likewise, when we are doing component testing, okay, when we are doing component testing, there are different frameworks available for us. So most of the time, frameworks such as Jest for JavaScript and TypeScript are doing that kind of things. In frameworks like frameworks or libraries like Angular, we have also Jest in order to make the things. When it is coming to Android world, when we are talking about Android for mobile application, we have component testing libraries such as Robotletic, okay, Espresso. There are like a lot of things that we can do. So based on what testing that you're going to do, you need to select a proper testing library as well. Okay, so component testing, make sure we are testing the visible UI and all those things. Okay, whatever we will be grasping as users. And the last one, end-to-end test. So end-to-end test is kind of a different approach, kind of a different thing that we're going to be doing. End-to-end test is not gonna test a one single component, one single business logic. No, but as the name suggests, is gonna test completely from one end to another end, what we call sometimes a flow. So end-to-end test might incorporate some things like log into the system, and once the system is login, you go to your profile. Once you go to the profile, you need to scroll down 10 times, then click on the post and delete that post. That kind of whole flow is what we call an end-to-end test. Okay, so when we are thinking about an end-to-end test, okay, one thing that we need to remember that end-to-end test is a good way to check all the functionalities, okay, all the functionalities within our application. And by the way, when we are using end-to-end testing frameworks for web, there are different type of frameworks. For mobile, we have different type of frameworks. You need to figure out which one suits for what. Okay, so most of the time when we are working with web application, you would be using uh, end-to-end frameworks like Cypress or Playwright. There are like older versions like Selenium. Okay, so there are like a lot of options out there when you are trying to write end-to-end tests. So one thing that is that is unique about end-to-end test is that they do not consider the framework or the library that we are writing on. So for example, if you are writing an Angular application, React application for web, it doesn't matter. Okay, whatever the framework that you've written, at the end, the flow will be tested by the Cypress. Okay, so it does not have to be a certain application type or something like that. It will be tested out by a normal way. Okay, so make sure when you are writing end-to-end test, it's gonna check all the things within the system, and it will work in a place where all these things will execute, and once the execution is done, it will go away. One more thing that we need to be worry about end-to-end test is the execution time. Okay, the execution time for end-to-end test is compared to component testing and unit testing is really slow. Why? As you guys can see, it need to load everything up. Okay, the whole system should be loaded. Otherwise, we can't test a flow, right? It's not like testing a one single small component. We need to test the whole system. So I mean, we do not need to load the whole system as it is, but when we're trying to test a flow, the component needed to test that flow should be loaded as it is. Otherwise, it will not work. So in a scenario like that, make sure end-to-end tests are kept as minimal as much as possible. Okay. In a project, what we call, there is something called test pyramid. Okay. So when we are considering, writing tests within an application, the first thing that we need to do is consider this thing. We call this one as the test pyramid. Okay, so you guys can see at the top you will see end-to-end test, then you will see integration test. Sometimes we have integration test, component test. At the bottom you have unit test. So the main reason this is a pyramid, the base of it contains the portion of how they are representing. You guys can clearly see the unit test have a much more portion. That means when you are writing a these three kind of tests, make sure you have a lot of unit tests, okay, and medium amount of integration tests and fairly few amount of end-to-end tests. In a percentage, if we take the testing percentage within an application, 60 to 70% should be unit test, and 40 to 30% should be integration test, and the other rest, okay, the for depending on the portion that you are paying, like it's gonna be like 10 or 5%, that kind of small portion is given to end-to-end test. The reason behind that, you guys can see end-to-end tests are fairly slow, okay. If you have too many slow executions, testing will take much more time. That is not good, okay. So more unit tests execute really fast, so they are working as expected, so you don't have to worry about those things. Integration test also, it consistently look for the things in the component, but it also might have some additional issues. So make sure the integration tests are also in a moderate level. So take a look at the testing pyramid as well, as you will learn more testing things. Okay, so we covered up the basics of testing. So why we need testing, and what are the testing that we will find in a decent project, and what is the amount of proportion that each of these tests will have within a project, especially considering the test pyramid. Take a look at test pyramid and the portion of it. Okay, so we have seen the advantages, disadvantages of each and every testing type, what they are covering. They are not like, do not compare unit test with end-to-end test. They are like two different things, okay, two different things. They have two different purposes, but they save a similar cost. Okay, any questions up until this, guys? Okay, all right. So I will conclude the lectures for today, and probably tomorrow we will have the last one. And on the records, do you have anything to ask?